I think without any doubt he was the worst Labour leader we ever had. He abandoned the commitment to a fairer society. After all, what's wrong with Clause 4, trying to get a fair reward for your labour? What's wrong with the United Nations Charter, which he tore up? Why didn't he consult his cabinet? He didn't. Why didn't he consult Parliament? He didn't. Why didn't he ever listen to the Labour Party Congress? He didn't. I mean, he ran it like a medieval monarch.
So why was he the only Labour leader to win 3 elections in a row?
Well, I think because the British establishment couldn't believe their luck. They had Thatcherite policies carried through by a Labour Prime Minister, able to call on the Labour Party to support him out of loyalty. And although he got sniping in the press, and Alistair Campbell made a lot of that, I think New Labour's had probably the best press. Why? Because they were following the policies of Mrs. Thatcher. That's my conviction.
What do you make of Alistair Campbell's diaries? You're a great political diarist yourself.
Well,
you've got a new volume coming out in the autumn. What do you make of Mr. Campbell's diaries?
Well, I got them the other day.
I went
early at 9 o'clock to Waterstones in case there'd be a queue like Harry Potter. And I said to the girl there, "Have you got the Blair years?" And she said, "How do you spell Blair?" And I thought that says it all.
But you must have dipped into it.
I have dipped into it, yes.
And your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it is absolutely, passionately loyal to the Prime Minister, which is what Alistair Campbell, there's no objection to that. And he simply describes how Tony Blair ran the party and the government as a king, which he was. He appointed peers, appointed archbishops, he did that, and he denied any democratic discussion or decision about anything he wanted to do. He said, "I thought I was right." Well, perhaps he did, but democracy isn't just to have a leader who thought he was right. It's a leader who gets consent and discusses and listens, and I don't think there was much of that.
Now, you famously left the House of Commons because you wanted to spend
Yes.
more time in politics, and you still campaign, and you've got your one-man show, and you...
Well, I don't do much of that anymore.
But you've done that, and you still have strongly... Do you see in any way, hand on heart, can you see the country moving your way, or is it still as far away from what you believe in as ever?
Oh, when I look back, I think of the things I campaigned for that worked. For example, colonial liberation. Because I was in Africa as a pilot during the war, I saw the conditions in the old Zimbabwe. And all the people I worked with, Gandhi, I met him as a child, and Mandela, and all locked up when we had an empire, ended up having tea with the Queen. So the colonial liberation movement succeeded. Then, as I mentioned, a lot of the causes that I've supported, for example, freedom of information, getting rid of prerogative powers, leaving the church to appoint its bishops, they've come along. But you see, what concerns me now is my grandchildren. I have 10 of them. This is the first generation in human history that has the capacity to destroy the human race. You kill a few people with a bow and arrow and a sword, but with nuclear, chemical and biological weapons you could destroy the human race. And we also have the resources, the money, the technology, the know-how to solve the problems of the human race. And my attention is almost entirely focused on how you can get away from a world run by big business dictators and so on, and bankers who have no... How can you get democracy into the structure of the world? And that's what I thought the UN Charter was about.
Can you see any of that being more likely to happen under Gordon Brown as opposed to Tony Blair?
Well, I don't personalise it if I can, but if you look at when the Berlin Wall came down, they said all socialism finished. Now, with the defeat in Iraq, and the Americans have been defeated, and the growth of socialism in Latin America, it's all beginning to look a bit different again. But I think the way I look at it now is every generation has to fight the same battles. There's no railway station called socialism or peace or democracy, and if you catch the right train, you get there. Every generation has to struggle. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity of a long life, because I've learned, I've made a lot of mistakes, published them all in my diary, but I hope in my life I've never said anything I didn't believe in order to get on. That I would be ashamed of. But as to making mistakes and learning from experience, that's what it's about.
But are you optimistic or are you depressed about the extent to which things are going your way or are not going your way?
Well, my way isn't what it's about. I think...
But your ideas...
I think the way they control us, Andrew, they try to frighten us. It was the Kaiser, Stalin, Hitler, Muslims. It'll be the Chinese next. They try to divide us, men, women, black, white, Muslim. They try to demoralise us by saying, you failed the 11+, you're a failure for life. And they try to make us cynical. And I think left pessimism, you know, we always lose, and the cynicism of the media, they're all a lot of bunch of crooks, is actually, these are the problems you have to get over. You have to be not frightened, not divided, not demoralized, and not cynical. And if you do that, it's amazing what can be achieved. I mean, think of the end of apartheid. Look at votes for women. Look at, oh gosh, when I look at history, all the battles that have been won, it doesn't matter who, well, nobody can claim the credit. It's the movements that change things, and I'm there to encourage people.
But it sounds like you would also relish being a young man again starting out in politics.
Well, I think what I learned in my life was encouragement. When somebody said to me as a young MP, Tony, you haven't quite got it right, you carry on. What we all need is encouragement. And all I'd like on my gravestone is Tony Benn, he encouraged us. If that's on my gravestone, as far as I'm concerned, I shall die a happy man.
Tony Benn, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.